Hello everybody, welcome back to the Lore of Vasten episode 4. This is Kyths Story. It's going to be presented in an audiobook kind of podcast fashion, so you don't need to necessarily watch it. You can just listen. The cinematics on the screen are going to be unrelated to the actual story. But where we left off, Kyth had been attending the Zygon Society and had passed his Drew trials and was a full-fledged, Chikor, which means he had all 7 affinities. So the Prince Rydar, came to the academy, to the school, and asked for basically volunteers for a mission into the Nether. He was what Kyth just found out is that he had just gotten his wife Jomi pregnant, and he was just imagining what sort of childhood this child would have if the Nether War was raging. And he stood up and he volunteered. So Kyth, Thom, and Gibby, the best friends, all signed up. They went forward to Prince Rydar's call after the meeting. This is where we're going to pick up. Hope you enjoy. Leave me a like if you don't mind. Comment and tell me how you like the story going forward. It's an 8-part story, so I'm going to be going every other day. If you missed the old episodes, you can just go back in the playlist and grab them, okay? We'll see you next time. Thanks so much for coming by. Pa, that is the most ridiculous story I have ever heard. We all know of Prince Rydar's Nether invasion. It was only the singular most important event in human history, but it was almost 400 years ago. Jome's face fell from amused to angry. We've been walking this whole time, and you've just been feeding me a line of zombie rotten flesh. Kyth raised an eyebrow. There may be some things in this world, Jome, that in all of your 8 years you don't yet know of. The gentle ribbing seemed to have the desired effect of dampening Jome's anger. Well, how could you have been part of Prince Rydar's gambit? What, are you 400 years old? 425, actually. Explain, demanded Jome. Yes, Master Jome. Jome rolled his eyes but continued walking down the path. Prince Rydar broke us up into many teams. One Zygon Drew would lead each team of soldiers. Our mission was simple enough in concept, though, as it turned out, not so easily done. We formed near the crater of Talatal. People in those days had started calling the area White Sands from the decimation after the battle. The prince formed a council to help him split the army into dozens and dozens of teams. Each would head off once we entered the Nether and established a foothold. Our mission was to break the obsidian portals, destroying all the obsidian and lava, effectively stranding the pigmen in hell. After breaking each portal, each team would continue to the next portal site. Every block of obsidian must be destroyed. If we left even 10 single blocks of obsidian in the whole of the Nether, they would be able to form a new portal and invade. We knew of 52 different portals before going in, but there could be dozens, even hundreds that were unknown. Scouting parties would be sent in all directions, searching the red landscape for any sign there might be a portal. The council was made up of 3 half-elves from Endur's Rest, several of Port Brave's most highly decorated generals, and 7 of us from the Zygon Society. The prince took notice of me early on. I'm not sure to this day why. He never treated me differently in front of the others. Often, he would ask me to stay after the many, many meetings we had to discuss strategy. It was in one of those meetings that we decided on the failsafe. If we left a portal open for a return trip, the pigmen could one day find it. All the portals would have to be closed, and this would have to be a one-way trip. It was decided once we crossed into the Nether, the first portal would be destroyed and we would break apart into teams. We moved to the next phase, keeping this plan a secret, known only to the prince and myself as we moved to a small hamlet to the west for the final staging area. The men were training most of the day, using the rest of the day to gather supplies. We knew little of the Nether in those days, but what reports had come out of the Hell Dimension reported barren wasteland made up of netherrack. We would need to take all the wood, iron, food, supplies that we would ever need. Finally, after weeks of planning, training, gathering supplies, it was time. Prince Rydar addressed the army. I'll be frank with you all. We are going to lose. Many have suspected it, some believe it, but I, as well as the leadership from Port Bray, Caraway, Endur's Rest, and the rest of our allies, know it to be fact. In a short number of years, if the war continues as it is, humanity will become extinct. The enormous crowd grew restless. I could see people glancing at each other. The prince had just confirmed the feelings in the pits of our stomachs. I believe this is our last best chance at victory. Prince Rydar laid out our plan to the army. So much had been kept secret, if someone with detailed knowledge of the plan were to be taken captive, it would fall apart in minutes. Surprise was our only advantage. Now, with our departure imminent, it seemed it was time to make the plan known. I want to be completely honest and clear with you all. This will be a one-way trip. If we are successful, there will be no portal to return through, and we will likely be hunted and killed by the stranded pigmen. If we fail, we, along with all we love in this world, will follow us into the afterlife. The prince looked out at the thousands of men under his command. I will not order you to follow me into hell, but if you want to return to your families, now is the time. No man here will look down upon you. If you stay, we will march into the Nether and into the stories of legend. Today is the day that we will win. No sound but the wind gently growing across the plains of grass followed the prince's speech. There was no cheering, no stomping, nothing but the breeze. Those things are done in stories. These men, my friends, knew they were going to die. The prince paused, waiting for anyone to break ranks, yet not one man did. He glanced at me and with a small smile, nodded for his men to light the nether portal. We began to move. The prince was the first through. I followed him along with most of the war council. A few, including my friend Gibby, remained to make sure everyone made it through the portal. This was one of the most perilous parts of the plan. If there was a pigmen outpost or patrol nearby, we could be discovered and before even starting, fail. Fortune smiled on us that day. Immediately the brutes activated our iron glyphs and started digging. We would leave no trace of our entrance to the nether and operate from deep underground, under the netherrack. Crate after crate of iron, diamonds, food, lapis, wood, and more came through the portal. It was an operation unlike anything ever done by humanity. Unfortunately, cobblestone generators will not work in the end, so we had to begin smelting netherrack into brick immediately to start building. Our biggest fear was to be assaulted by the pigmen before we split up and began the portal attacks. With hundreds of builders working around the clock, our underground base grew quickly. We had sleeping quarters, dining halls, enormous gardens for our food supplies, war chambers with training barracks, and much more in just a few days. It was an astounding work of craftsmanship. We had one final meal together before it began. The prince and I sat together as we usually did, along with Gibby, Thom, and a half-elf who had grown close to us named Gilda. She smiled at Prince Rydar. You know, my great-great-uncle is partially responsible for this mess. The prince raised an eyebrow. Gilda laughed. My great-great-grandfather's brother was Gamir. The prince's smile faded. Gamir had been the one survivor from the Battle of Talatal. He escaped and took word of man's betrayal to the Wood Elves. If that news had never escaped, the elves and dwarves most likely would not have abandoned man. You blame my uncle? Gilda's smile remained, but her eyes were watching the prince's reaction closely. It was his duty. Prince Rydar paused. Perhaps what we do tomorrow will set right an offense made many years ago. Perhaps. The group watched the dining hall for a time before Gilda once again turned to the prince. I will follow you. I believe in you, but I'll be watching you as well. I interjected. Prince Rydar has done nothing to cast doubt on his honor. It's in my blood, Kyth. The prince turned to look at me, kindness and perhaps a touch of sadness on his face. It was almost 200 years ago, before House Danau and House Finnick marriage. Prince Castian led the grand army of men and failed to attack. Everyone knows the coward Castian at Talatal, Rydar, I said, waving my hand. 200 years is a long time. Time enough for people to forget. Time enough for a few iron ingots to change hands in the order of man. And copyists could neglect to mention certain facts in their history books. You may be surprised at how few men control what history says by simply copying books. I don't understand. Castian was his first name. He was placed in command by his father, King Finnick. To fathers and sons, and their sons after that, Gilda raised her cup. We three took a sip of some pink wool wine brought through the portal. It was more bitter than it had been a few moments before. I could only think of my unborn child. Either way this mission went, I would never see my baby's eyes. Gilda turned to stare fully at Prince Rydar and myself. Place me on Rydar's team. I will see this mission done. With a small nod, it was done. All was said. We would leave in the morning.